I am C. Paul Singh, President of NISWAT. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
President of NISWAT, I am here to wish you a very good evening and thank you all for joining us at this evening on this edition of our international webinar. To our eminent speakers, as well as delegates and participants who have come to join us from a number of countries, I extend very warm welcome. We have a number of delegates from countries outside India, which have made our webinars truly international. The last webinar was organized by us on creating value in business. It was very largely attended and highly appreciated by the delegates as per feedback received by us. The theme of the present webinar is Peaceful Environment Essential for Business Growth. Very topical subject of the day. Everyone should be interested in the peaceful environment and the growth of business. I request the delegates present here to pay their intense attention to what the eminent speakers have to say and take home, carry home some of the lessons, I would call it, or jewels of wisdom which these speakers convey to us. I wish everyone a very, very successful and fruitful participation in our webinar. A few words about NISWAT, the institution which is hosting these webinars. We started NISWAT about 3 decades back and have a legacy of conducting training courses in the field of security, safety, management, and applied technology. With our training methodology and well-defined curriculum, we came to occupy a position of prominence and prestige in the country in these training courses. With the passage of time, we introduced subjects like loss prevention, risk mitigation, safety and security audits, etc. With the passage of time, we have also commenced distance learning courses and programs. Now, presently, our vision is we aspire to become the foremost corporate training institute and a think tank organization in the field of security, safety, management, and applied technology. And thus we started the process of creating a research cell and a think tank in the field of these subjects, these spectrums, to provide quality educational program, research facilities to the extent possible, consultancy, and training services to meet the existing and the future needs, the future challenges in the field of security audits, loss prevention management, and technology is our aim. Our think tank would provide adequate information available and create research paper which can be referred and which is stocked in our library. We shall contribute effectively, hopefully, in the field of social security also, economic security, and resource development. Gentlemen and ladies, or ladies and gentlemen, the subject of today's webinar, peaceful environment essential for business growth. It is said that positive economic, social, and political factors lead to business growth, and they make a sustainable development in any country. peaceful environment and maintenance of law and order are almost one side or the other side of the same coin. We know that they are inextricably linked to peace and business growth. Some other facets, some other fascinating ideas have been given by some people. As they say, there are two schools of thought. Some people say that peaceful environments are essential for the growth of business or economy. Some say that economy itself will lead to peaceful environment. In fact, no doubt they are complementary to each other, but the school of thoughts are different. I will not refer to the Marxist school, which basically believes that it is the peaceful environment and the growth in economy which will lead to lessening the crime in any society. And that is how they say that certain terrorist movements, etc., come up because there's a lack of growth of economy or development in economy. Others say, no, since the crime is there, since the instability is there, since peace is not there in the society, hence it is leading to crime. Now, I was deeply associated with the terrorist, anti-terrorist movement in Punjab. And I vividly remember that from 1987 to 1992, the Punjab terrorism resulted in a decline of agriculture growth from 6% to 2%. It is recorded. Regressive analysis was conducted, and it showed that investment was declining. People were scared from extortion and also migration of labor. This all resulted in collapse of business in various sectors. Now, regressive analysis besides, the question is that can we do something to contain such disruptive tendencies? Now, there are two points of view which I like to say. First is, yes, we should. There has to be a political will, there has to be machinery, and the machinery has to work impartially. The criminal justice system has to be absolutely balanced and impartial and objective. Now, these are the two aspects. Let us see how and in what manner our two eminent speakers talk on this subject and what is their view. A word about our chairman, Captain Pavanjit Singh Ahluwalia. He is a chairman of Ahluwalia Holding Company, which has under its belt a number of other companies like India Skill Private Limited. They have got Tax Courts, they have got Premier Eye, and number of other companies, guarding companies. Now, national and international recognition has been accorded to Mr. Pawan Ahluwalia. Wherever he has been, he has occupied a position of prominence in any association. He was a past president and chairman of the Council of Investigations based in International Investigation based in USA, where he was awarded to
I think we lost him.
A number of other associations, FICCI, Indo-American Chamber, KEFC, Central Association of Private Security Industry, and a number of other things. As far as Mr. Pawan Ahluwalia is concerned, I can say without any hesitation that he is the one who is absolutely action-oriented. I have been associated with him for long, and I know that he doesn't want to work in the realm of dream, that it will grow itself and let us imagine and all. He wants action, action, and method. I can say without any hesitation that when he resigned from his army service as a young officer at a young age, some of his friends were worried. They were thinking whether he's taken a wise step, will it right direction is going. But today, they all believe that he has carved out a success for himself. He has carved out a success for himself. He has a passion. He has the focus. He has the perseverance. And he has also the ideas to move forward. With these words, after introducing Mr. Pawan Ali Alia, I request him now to come forward, moderate the session, and introduce the speaker, Mr. Pawan Ali Alia, sir.
Thank you very much, President Sir. And I think it's my honorable duty at this point of time to introduce the President as well as he's introduced me. Mr. Sipal is probably one of the most eminent police officers that I have known in my life. He served in several Indian states on senior Indian police positions. He was the first chairman or the first chief of the Rapid Action Force, which was formed to deal with communal riots. He raised from inception and headed the Internal Security Academy in Rajasthan, which was meant to train senior administrators, police officers, and higher echelons of the public and private sector undertakings on security, law and order. In recognition of his outstanding services during his service career, he was decorated with the President's Police Medal for Distinguished Service, Indian Police Medal for Meritorious Service, Police Special Duty Medal with Bar, Sena Medal, and a number of commendations and rewards. After retirement and while in business, he has been honored by the President of India in 2009 as the Security Personality of the Year. Then the Home Minister was not to be left behind, and he honored him with the Dronacharya Award in 2011. Then the Governor of Punjab presented him with the Scroll of Honor in 2012. He has been awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award by an organization called LAPSA, which is a nation organization. And in Bangkok, he was recognized for his lifetime achievement by the Police Association in Thailand. He is a master's in English literature. He is a graduate from Punjab University. Before he joined the police service, he served in a Swiss company as a pharma executive, where he established certain brands in India. He also helped his father post-partition to run his father's business, which included the running of a cinema hall in the city of Ludhiana. And before joining the police in 1962, he served as a lecturer in Punjab University. He has been deeply involved with the skills training and making the national occupational standards in India. He was chairman of the committee to work out the star rating of the private security sector. In addition, he is an advisor to the Asian Professional Security Association. He is the Honorary Director General of the Central Association of Private Security Industry in India and the Association of the Private Detectives of India. His face is well known in the country as a dynamic security professional who has appeared in a number of national TV programs. His interviews, press briefings have always received wide media coverage. Ladies and gentlemen, this was a word about our president. I will now introduce the first speaker of the day, Ranjit Pashnanda. When I compare the CVs of all the police officers I've ever met, I think Ranjit stands out in his ability as a police officer, heads and shoulders above all his colleagues and compatriots. He joined the police service in the Indian Police Service in 1983 in the West Bengal cadre. And since then, he's been looking after the peaceful environment wherever he has been posted, which has been essential for business growth. He recently left the position as the chairman of the Haryana Public Services Commission, a very coveted appointment. He has been the security advisor to the Chief Minister of Assam. He retired from the police service as the Director General of the Indo-Tibetan Border Police. He has served as the Director General of the National Disaster Response Force. He has been the Director General of West Bengal Police. He's been the Commissioner of Police in Calcutta. He's been responsible for all the airport security in India under the Central Industrial Security Force. He has been the Assistant Director General Operations of CRPF. He has been the Assistant Director General of the Armed Police in West Bengal. He has been Inspector General Operations of BSF, and in his early career has been the Superintendent of Police of the Central Bureau of Investigation in Chandigarh. Very, very illustrious gentleman, very, very illustrious. Educationally, he's an economic honors from one of the best colleges in India, the St. Stephen's College. And he did his LLB, Bachelor's of Law from Punjab University in Chandigarh, where he stood first in the university. For the services that he's rendered to the country, he's been awarded the President's Medal for Distinguished Service in 2007, the Indian Police Medal for Meritorious Service in 1999. He has been recommended on the rolls, I think about 6 or 7 times. He has been mentioned by the Prime Minister as an outstanding officer while he was in the Special Protection Group, and also by the Minister of State and the Chief Secretary of West Bengal. He has headed several Indian delegations to the United Nations, the Chiefs of Police Security, the Interpol, in Israel and in the United States. He also holds a singular honor of heading the Republic Day Parade in Calcutta, which is generally held by a military officer. He's authored a book on terrorism and response to threat and published several articles. And not the least, he's a Sword of Honor from the Indian Police Academy. He's an excellent sportsperson. He excels in riding, swimming, squash. He was third as a junior national. He's an ace firing specialist and a sniper. He plays excellent tennis, hockey, and football. And today his passion is golf. All these aside, he's a good painter and his paintings adorn many walls. So ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Ranjit Pashtanda.
Thank you so much, Captain Pavanjit Ahluwalia, Chairman, for your kind and generous words. I am really grateful that you've invited me to speak on this very topical and important topic today. Shri Sipal Singh, President Nismat, has adequately explained how the conference is going to go. And also my co-speaker, Mr. Steve Vickers, and the audience, the August international audience. I wish to congratulate Captain for organizing this talk and also many such events which Nismat and his organization have been holding with great aplomb. The topic for today, as you know, is a peaceful environment is essential for business growth. Now, what do we mean by a peaceful environment? A peaceful environment indicates an environment and a state of affairs devoid of a state of war, terrorism, or insurgency, and where law and order and the internal security scenario is always under control. Hence, a peaceful global environment is essential for business and development and for developmental cooperation. Such cooperation must be undertaken in the exercise of the sovereign will of each member of the community of nations as an expression of comity of all. The biggest threat to a peaceful environment is the phenomenon of terrorism, and no cause justifies the indiscriminate killing of innocent civilians as a means to achieve a political goal or a change of policies. Other factors which hinder growth are an adverse law and order situation caused by communal disharmony, industrial unrest, riots, closure, as we call in India, bands, closures, and crime. Coming to the main cause, terrorism, as we all know, is a curse on mankind. This insanity is perpetuated by the fanatic acts of deranged barbarians who have no value for human life, for the sanctity of human life. Thousands of innocent people have lost their lives in terrorist attacks. Terrorist onslaughts has hit them in cinema halls, marketplaces, malls, multiplexes, and other crowded places. In fact, terrorism is the most egregious source of human rights violations and is a major impediment to business growth. The evil of terrorism has crippled life in several countries, leading to devastation, destruction, unemployment, and misery, human misery. The evil of terrorism has hindered economic development to a great way, because economic development can take place only when the environment is peaceful and the law and order situation is stable. So we as responsible citizens must declare war internally against this specter of savagery which is bound to paralyze the socio-economic fabric of all economies. Terrorism initially emerged as a global phenomenon in the late 60s, continued to hinder economic growth in the 90s, despite our efforts to combat it, and will continue to remain a nightmare in the present century. In view of the highly technological character of and nature of future terrorists, and also the introduction of ABC warfare, atomic, biological, chemical, and the use of weapons of mass destruction, which cause dread, fear, and fright. This specter of terrorism has assumed alarming proportions. It is said that the globalization and brutalization of violence has ushered a new age of violence, of crime, which is bound to hinder economic growth. And it has been very difficult for countries to counter terrorism because the technology of terrorism has vastly improved. Similarly, the targets of terrorism are more widespread than ever before. Sophisticated means of communications have helped terrorists. Today, are targets of terrorism increasing? Because terrorism has become a low-cost, high-value tool in national and international politics. What cannot be achieved by the ballot is expected to be achieved by the bullet. And therefore, terrorism has actually become an industry, giving rise to several think tanks, research centers, consultancy firms, and kickbacks. Whatever additional factors, the fact is that several internal situations are in turmoil. While terrorism and crime have a direct impact on socio-economic development, economic factors too have a direct impact on the cause of terrorism and crime. Foreign investment in many countries is pimpled to a few areas, whereas the rural areas are as backward as ever. This has led to a factor that the chasm between the haves and the have-nots has further increased, and this has led to fissures in the social fabric. Concomitantly, this has further led to disgruntlement, unemployment, and these are the type of people that foreign powers are looking for to indoctrinate and seduce for their further acts of terrorism, crime, and violence. Today, any fight against terrorism and crime has to be accompanied by an equitable fight against drugs, that is narco-terrorism, because drug money is used to finance terrorism. India is boxed in by from three sides by the Golden Crescent and the Golden Triangle. Invisible enemies fighting uncivilized proxy wars threaten the basic integrity and unity of any country. The experience of many countries shows how difficult it is to halt extremist violence and other violence and unrest in a place, in a country where ethnic, political, and religious groups try their best to promote strife and violence and make the situation which we need to get under control. And if these violent forces have been fed on a staple diet of fundamentalism, it makes the Molotov cocktail more menacing. No one can counter the argument or disagree that the freedom of democracies offers a very fertile ground for breeding crime and terrorism, because the to uh, right to represent is a constitutional right. A right to speech is a constitutional right in many countries. In today's world of economics and economic development, we must all realize that terrorism and crime helps no one. Economies crumble under the pressure of terrorism, leading to unemployment, poverty, and which is bound to trigger riots and civil wars, the end result of which will be total destruction and devastation. The economic devastation of one economy has a multiplier effect and percolates to other states. Sustainable development is both the bedrock and highest aspiration for the well-being of all citizens. Enforcement of law and order and a crime-free society is a sine qua non to business growth. There have been several cases where lupin elements have tried to extort money from business houses under the garb of local protection. This has caused havoc and fear amongst the business community. Similarly, closures, what we call bands, and strikes in factories has disrupted the entire supply chain of production. Not only does productivity suffer, but also the welfare of the workers, whose wages too stand to get hampered. In fact, I will narrate that when militancy was on in Darjeeling, where I was posted, the tea gardens were all closed. I had to go, whenever I'd go to any tea garden, the men would all run away. And I used to speak to all the ladies and convince them that if the tea gardens are closed, what are their children going to do? How are they going to fill their stomachs? And it is the ladies who ensured that all the tea gardens and the orange gardens were open. Otherwise, people would have actually died of hunger. Hence, if we do not want populations and civilizations to perish, we must realize that the national interest of all countries needs to be one, that is economic development. The progress of one country is not ensured by the barbaric law of destruction of another, but by its concomitant development. In fact, in today's world, sovereignty or national security is not only dependent on military might as it used to in yesteryears. In today's world, national security would majorly hinge on economic might, economic strength, and business development, as also technological prowess, especially in an era of globalization and increasing economic interdependence. Hence, again, I would repeat that it is in everyone's interest to strive for a peaceful environment, as it is majorly economic growth which will catapult a country higher and higher. Countries investing in developing countries stand as much to gain as the developing countries themselves. And once this actual realization of one common national interest comes forth, and the faster it comes, the better will there be no problem in international cooperation and determination, which is the core issue. Hence, apart from doing away with terrorism and insurgency, which means an effective, peaceful environment on the internal security scenario, we must also have a good border security system and concentrate on cyber security, disaster security, environmental security, nuclear security, and ensure that there is no industrial unrest, there is no communal disharmony, in order to achieve economic security, health security, energy security, and buoyant business growth. Today, India has all the prerequisites for a buoyant economy and business growth. This is because the security scenario has vastly improved in the last 5 years, be it the threat of terrorism, Naxal insurgency, border security, or disaster security. The creation of the Union Territory of J&K, the greatest achievement since independence, has led to an exasperation in the ranks of terrorists from across. Local recruitment has come to an end. All our neighbors, Pakistan's efforts to initiate terrorist acts have only resulted in their constant decimation in every encounter. Hence, Kashmir has witnessed a new sunrise with a spate of development, building of infrastructure, generation of employment, and promotion of business growth. This is evident from the fact that 506 out of 2273 development projects stand completed, while 963 are due for completion by next year. Similarly, in the last 5 years, the security scenario in the Northeast and Naxalite affected areas has greatly improved, and the environment has become peaceful and ready for growth. There is no problem of communalism or industrial investment. Oh, I don't know how my video is off.
All right.
Yeah,
Is it
now-
on?
Yeah, now you're back.
Yeah. So in India, there is no problem of law and order, communal disharmony. It's absolutely, there's all communal harmony everywhere, or any industrial unrest. I will just quote, there was a piece of paper here. There was a tweet from the Prime Minister's office of the Prime Minister here. Yeah, here it is. If you want returns with reliability, India is the place to be. If you want demand with democracy, India is the place to be. If you want stability with sustainability, India is the place to be. If you want growth with a green approach, India is the place to be. In fact, during the world's most challenging and unprecedented catastrophe, the COVID-19, countries cooperated with each other to ensure how they could fight against this invisible enemy. Our Prime Minister himself took the initiative of holding the G20 summit virtually, proposed the Conference of SAARC nations, and also held the NAM summit, and was in touch with all world leaders so that we could all cooperate and fight against this invisible enemy. India acted as a responsible global citizen and exported medicines without any condition to over 120 countries. Likewise, all countries must also, to ensure action against terrorism and international crime, to ensure business growth, face the challenge and take concerted action to counter this onslaught against humanity without adopting a policy of shifting convenience. The tirade against terrorism and crime is painstaking, and all efforts to counter it must be dedicated, relentless, and patriotic, be it tactics internally on the ground, strategy at the national level, or chess at the international level. The terrorist and the criminal have to be made the pawn. But for this, we all require determination, commitment, and resolute leadership of a very high order. Only then can mankind prevail and can business growth prevail and prevail with strength. The quest for peace in the crusade of a civilized, business-oriented growth world will definitely succeed. Hence, the need for peace, sovereignty, and solidarity for economic growth. And for that, we from our hearts must cooperate internally and externally with each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Ranjit. Thank you very much for a very nice talk. And now it's my duty to introduce Steve Vickers from Hong Kong. Steve is a police officer and a businessman. And I've known him for, I think, over 30 years now. He is the CEO of Steve Vickers and Associates, which is a specialized risk mitigation, corporate intelligence, and security consulting company. He is an acknowledged expert in resolving kidnap and ransom cases and draws upon an unrivaled network of contacts and information sources in the countries that he operates. Prior to Steve Vickers and Associates, he ran a company called International Risks Limited, which had 7 offices in Asia. He sold International Risks to FTI Incorporated, a NASDAQ company, in 2006 and remained with this company till 2011. Before International Risks, he headed Kroll Associates in Hong Kong, where he was the head for Asia Pacific. Steve served 18 years in the Royal Hong Kong Police and commanded the force's Criminal Bureau. His work included the command of the forces of Criminal Intelligence Bureau, managing covert resources, and operational command of declared kidnap, ransom, and product contamination issues. Steve speaks fluent Cantonese. He's a frequent commentator on political risks and crisis issues. His opinion on security matters is regularly sought by international media, and Steve lectures around the globe. He is an expert on peaceful environment and has assisted the growth of many businesses during his career in civil life. Thank you very much. And now over to Steve Vickers.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for a very warm and maybe overstated introduction, but thank you very much, my friend. Obviously, it's a great honor to have a chance to speak to you and to follow such a distinguished speaker. My perspective, and I'll try and power through it, not to bore you all to death, is based on 40 years in Asia, both private sector, as you explained, and in the government before that. I think I'll try and give the other side of the perspective from the business perspective if I can tonight, so we don't duplicate each other. And as to how big business maybe can help a little bit more by recognizing its own weaknesses and helping to support the situation. So my idea tonight is to try and share some experience and provide some basic checklists of what big corporations and companies can do when confronted with some of the challenges that we're talking about. But before I get to that, I need to start with a simple statement. Of course, a peaceful environment is essential for business and for any economy to grow, for sure. I mean, it's an absolute given. Defining, however, what constitutes a truly peaceful environment sounds simple, but when you actually have a look at it, it has a few wrinkles. I mean, in basic peacekeeping terms, direct violence or hot violence, structural violence, and cultural violence. They're the sort of 3 classic boxes that people look at. Direct violence is pretty obvious what that stands for. Structural violence, it depends on your viewpoint, which side of the which side of the divide you are on. Often people, religious groups, ethnic groups find themselves on the what they would say the opposite side of the viewpoint. Cultural violence again refers to what people perceive that's being done to them by a larger ruling party. So it's not as none of this is ever as simple as in black and white as it seems. And let's also not forget that political instability can happen quickly and unexpectedly, and if it's not handled well, efficiently, and with some understanding, it can degenerate very quickly. Sadly, I live in Hong Kong. Hong Kong's been my home for a very long time. I love the place. Obviously, I've lived and operated all around Asia, but Hong Kong has always been my base. And I'm sure you would have noticed that we've had a very significant series of developments over the last year, which is a classic reflection of what I'm just talking about. We had some long-term problems which were bubbling away under the surface to do with young people getting on the property ladder, difficulties in the environment generally, but overall things were going okay until the government made a huge, or the local government made a huge error over an extradition law. It got misinterpreted, people picked it up, and very quickly grievances which had been in place for a while surfaced. Many people feared they might be deported to Beijing or whatever, and it became out of control very quickly. Initially, the local government I would describe as being on analog, while the opposition were digital. Social media became weaponized. Things didn't move quickly enough. Tactical issues on the ground got out of control. And quite quickly, we had a very radicalized student movement, which sadly was allowed to get completely out of control. We had our equivalent of the mini parliament here. The Legislative Council was sacked one evening, and the mainland liaison offices were damaged and defaced. Clearly a challenge to a central government, which perhaps nobody in the world would tolerate. A major crackdown followed. A national security law is now in place, and I can say that Hong Kong has evolved, changed, and is radically different than it would have been or that it was a year ago. The integration of Hong Kong into mainland China has powered forward as a consequence of this. I'm up for democracy, but I'm not up for petrol bombs and violence. So many of us found ourselves very sad and conflicted by what happened. There were no heroes in what occurred here. The upshot is Hong Kong is now becoming ever more integrated into the mainland system, and as a city, it will remain a major global financial center, but it will be a major global Chinese financial center. So this is I raise this to show badly handled incidents from the beginning can get out of control very fast. The speed of the social media, the weaponization of it in a destabilization. I think people I'm looking at a few gentlemen in front of me. We're all over 21 or 25 between us. Maybe we haven't got our heads around the power and the danger of this, both in radicalization, mobilization, and the rest. So this was failed at the beginning to see that. So the situation got out of control quite quickly, and people are going to have to be a lot more realistic about the situation as we move forward. But from the point of view of stability on both sides of the coin, this is a classic example of change you just didn't want to happening. The second part, I think, again, if we look at it from a business point of view, the main problems I've seen with multinationals and large international firms from India and from all over the world who get into trouble offshore arise from their structure and their lack of understanding and lack of perception of political risk, which is which abounds in the countries they operate. And the net results are, apart from terrorism and crime, many other issues. White collar crime hits many multinationals who aren't prepared or who have not allowed for this situation. Collusion between people in countries where law and order begins to diminish or to fall down. Selection of bad political partners in support of companies who find themselves in difficult environments. People in some cases losing control of their own brands. Again, all associated with destabilization in a country, an implosion or a lack of cohesion in law and order. And again, the multinationals just don't particularly help themselves. So anyway, I looked at this for a while, and I looked at 5 to 10 ugly situations that had occurred in such situations. And we looked for common factors that might be present in any of these situations that from the business side of the house, not the government side of the house, had gone wrong. Well, in every one of these situations where a catastrophe had occurred, the company concerned had a matrix management system in place. It's all the rage, matrix management. It's great if you're selling lollipops or whatever you're doing. What it means is you don't have a clear chain of command like you might have in the military. So it's a lot of dotted lines in different countries, but it causes no action to be taken at a time when it's required. It causes people on the ground to be ignored by their headquarters. It causes sets of values which the Home Office might have being thrust down the throats of the people in the location concerned. So in every one of the instances that really went pear-shaped, matrix management was in place. In every one of the cases, in addition to the matrix management, a recent re-engineering of the company had occurred, where they made it more efficient, more quicker, more better, more faster, and eliminated whole tiers of management who had experience that went down for a long time. So now we had a dotted line management system. We had nobody with any sound business acumen or knowledge on the ground in place. In every one of these instances where things went pear-shaped, expatriate management rotated every 2 years. Now, my experience is 2 years, you can find out what your driver's name is, how to get home and back, and the rest. So the expatriate management tier, by expatriate, it could be Indian management in Japan, Japanese management. I mean, management from another country in a third country. But in every one of these cases, that happened. In every one of these cases, the local staff turnover was also high due to problems, local political problems, difficult problems, frustration with the status within the company. And again, so in the end, dotted lines, nobody in charge, high turnover, and a ticking bomb or ticking recipe for a problem. Many of these companies then decided that it's okay, we're gonna get a technical solution to our problem. So a desperate over-reliance on technical issues to resolve problems, which might work very, very well in environment A, but which do not translate particularly well to environment B. And that coupled with the mix-up over the personnel, the lack of quality local people, the matrix management, the dotted lines, the sudden replacement, and the deteriorating local environment, which often can be the case, made it worse. They had, in many cases, they get hammered for anti-money laundering or terrorist money laundering, again, due to the same things. Nobody in charge, nobody looking at the reality. Tick-the-box systems, which look very good to a bank in Europe, with no relevance whatsoever to a Hawala system, for example, in South Asia or the rest, again, compounded by the lack of control. And again, these companies got themselves into deep trouble by just not understanding the local environment. In addition to all the above, early warnings from their local governments as to problems were ignored, failing to vet local organizations to whom they were making payments, extortion payments being paid essentially to what turned out to be terrorist groups, But all of these things can occur to MNCs if they operate in a vacuum. And again, we've seen many of those things. And in every one of these cases that we looked at, the first thing I noticed when we looked at them was the staff morale was appallingly low. Why was it appallingly low? Well, it was appallingly low because of the matrix management, the sudden transfer of the people, the transfer of the managers every so many years, the extortion payments that have been paid to local people, the sudden change in turnover. So there is a side, there's one side is the government's job to get things done. The other side of the coin is that multinationals in particular and large corporations need to get their head and their hands involved in some of those issues. Unforeseen and political risk is certainly the one that most MNCs are hopeless at. They pay a fortune to people around the world, advisors, and you name them. They really often do not see what is coming to strike them until it's far too late. Why don't they see it? Well, for all the reasons I won't go through the matrix and the people, the transfers and the lack of local. The other reason they don't see it is because people on the ground don't want to hear bad news. The people on the ground do not want to transmit back to headquarters there is an issue. Many foreign managers manage upwards very elegantly, but they don't manage downwards. So these are all real factors that we see happening in the real world. And if we're going to cooperate and make sure that we have a corporate government alliance to deal with this is half of the problem is from the corporates. So I say political risk, and as always, the off-balance sheet risk, that which was not foreseen, is what leaps up and strikes companies the hardest. So in the end, if we came up with a list of 5, what could we do to make things better? We need better management systems, better controls, effective internal controls, strong and visible deterrence. The Chinese have a saying, which is to kill the chicken in front of the monkey. An absolute no-no on paying extortion demands to local terrorist groups for protection. And you'd be surprised just how many places and in how many countries that actually occurs. Clear reporting lines, clear responsibilities, and open and transparent relations. So that's the other side of the political instability piece. So I mean, I thought I would open the floor up to you, to ladies and gentlemen, to follow on and see where we go from here.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. I have a question which has come up, and it appears to be directed both to Ranjit Pashnanda. It says, terrorism destroys peace. How do you prevent terrorism?
Well, this is an answer which is like a shadow. How do you prevent terrorism? In fact, India is a very glorious example of how to prevent terrorism. Punjab today is probably the only place in the world where terrorism has actually been wiped out. But in general, how do you prevent terrorism? Before that, you must see what are the causes for terrorism? Is it for publicity? Is it to undermine authority? Terrorism can also be to express frustration, for financial gain, for extortion, to prevent repression, for obtaining certain concessions from the state for religious purposes, and also to address grievances and despairs. And it takes many manifestations. It can be in the form of a class struggle, a caste struggle, liberation struggle, or undeclared war, like a country did in Nicaragua, or it can be like a separatist movement, a power struggle. So, there are many factors which are responsible for terrorism, and there are many factors which can cure terrorism, and it can start with proper enforcement action, followed by some concessions, negotiations from a position of strength, retaliation, economic sanctions. So it's a mix of all kind of tactics in national interest, and the national interest of one country differs from another. That way, as I mentioned, India has been very successful in eliminating terrorism. And I think a combination of all factors will help in eliminating terrorism.
Thank you. I think one of the things that you mentioned was Punjab is the only state where terrorism has been wiped out. And one of the architects of wiping terrorism is Mr. Sipal Singh, the president of Nisbat, who was actively involved in wiping out terrorism in the state of Punjab. Mr. Sipal Singh, would you like to say a few words on this word terrorism destroys peace, and how do you prevent terrorism? And what did you do in the state of Punjab?
I'll not like to take the credit of wiping of terrorism. It's a question of giant efforts, both by the paramilitary forces as well as the local police. As Mr. Pachnanda has rightly pointed out, various factors are responsible and all factors have to be countered. I'll tell you, as far as Punjab terrorism is concerned, the end game in terrorism Punjab was brought, first of all, by a very resolute action and a free hand which was given to the forces, law enforcement authorities, by the political bosses of that time. Second was that we had to change our strategies accordingly. There was no such thing. We devised a scheme known as sector scheme. We carved out certain sectors, and those sectors were being operationally responsible as well as administratively responsible. The operational commander and the administrative commander of that particular sector, the giant hands, the information intelligence was coming from the local administration, and the operational head was wiping out. So there was a complete unison between the administrative heads and the operational heads. That was the sector scheme. And he has rightly pointed out, the borders were also required. So we had a sort of combination and meetings, frequent joint visits to the borders with the BSF and other forces which were deployed in the border to prevent border terrorism. There was also an element of narco-terrorism, as Mr. Pachnanda has pointed out. A lot of people who were just doing it for profit because of their narcotic things being penetrated or sent into Punjab and in turn being used. So we had to go to that extent. What Mr. Pachnanda has pointed out, he has written a book also on terrorism, a very nice book I've gone through. He is absolutely right that there are multiple factors and all the factors have to be put together. Endgame in Punjab was brought, as I told you, by very resolute action, by very strong action, and at the same time, the free hand which was given to the law enforcement agencies, and by a complete union of minds, union of brains, union of hands between the intelligence agencies, the operational intelligence agencies, and the administration. That is how Punjab terrorism. You remember I had given a talk on Punjab terrorism some time back in one of your forums. There are a number of things we devised which are absolutely new, which nobody thought of something like focal point patrolling. Nobody thought, there's no such thing as focal point patrolling. We thought of mobile patrolling. There are certain mobile patrolling, mobile nakas. So many things new were brought in according to the circumstances or the terrorism prevailing at that time. And of course, the leadership of Mr. KPS Gill cannot in any way be considered there's nobody who could be such a leader who would support his juniors to the hill. So that was another factor also, a very, very, very important factor of Mr. KPS who is supporting us all, everywhere.
I agree with Mr. Sipal Singh. Mr. KPS Gill gave very stellar leadership and he had a great team and this team's spirit enabled everyone to wipe out terrorism. In fact, in some countries, as I mentioned, terrorism has also become an industry as a tool for organized crime. I will not name those countries, So, we have to go to the cause and address what is the reason for that, and then a multi-pronged attack depending on the causes and the situations of in which terrorism is breeding in those countries.
Steve, you had tremendous experience in handling the triads out of Japan and the resultant impact on civil society because of their wanting extortion money here and there. And you've been also an expert on the kidnap and ransom situations. Would you like to sort of give an example of how you handled one such case which involved the triads?
Okay, well, triads obviously it's a Chinese thing, not a Japanese. In Japan, they have the Yamaguchi Gumi, which is a different different bunch of chaps. The difference with triads and organized crime, they've been a problem for hundreds of years. Prior to the handover of Hong Kong, the Brits were keen on cracking down on them, largely because during World War II, the triads collaborated with the Japanese during the invasion, and that focused minds, and they became engaged in issues close to stability. So for many years, we ran undercover programs. The goal was not to prosecute them. It would be to infiltrate, destabilize, neutralize, and obviously occasionally prosecute. But destabilization was the goal. To take a wider context around Southeast, I've done a lot of work in the Philippines, southern Thailand, and others on so-called terrorist groups. And sometimes I fear the media, even governments, tend to give them too much kudos. 20 guys, 2 Kalashnikovs, and a telephone can be overly recognized as a terror. The key is to grab them, lock them up, don't let them fund money. Abu Sayyaf in the southern Philippines is a classic example. They're ostensibly a terrorist organization, but actually they're primarily a kidnap for ransom business. And maybe a little bit a light side. I was sent by an insurance company to a place called Haldia in southern India, south of Calcutta, many years ago, who were convinced that there was either a communist conspiracy or a terrorist conspiracy because someone threw a blast bomb over a wall into a chemical factory, and they were very upset for understandable reasons. And the insurance company were upset because they didn't want to have to pay the. So I went down to investigate it, looking for communists. I couldn't find any communists that did it. I worked with the local police, who were very helpful. We looked for some terrorists. We couldn't actually find any terror. And in the end, it came down to the fact that the Japanese people who owned the factory had not let the lorry drivers park near to the factory in the local village where they used to meet the young ladies from the local village. It became very upset. And one of them one night threw the blast bomb over the wall. So instead of being a great terrorist conspiracy, it turned out to be something a little bit more, a little bit more mundane. My point being, we need to be careful not to build these organizations' ethos. Many of these are quite small. The media, they make great use of the media and social media. I think one of our goals should be to deflate them, disenfranchise them, and cut the money off as far as is humanly possible. And that requires cooperation from both the government and the private side.
You were narrating the story on Haldia, and I don't know whether you remember, I assisted you on this case.
I do, but I didn't want to blow your cover there, sir. But yes.
Okay, there's one more question that's come up. Does India have a policy on terrorism? Ranjit, would you like to answer this?
Yes, India has a very strong policy on terrorism. That's all I can say now, because I know it's got a very dominating policy on terrorism and a very effective policy on terrorism. But I would not like to say further.
Okay, Mr. Sipal Singh, would you like to throw some light on the declared policy of India on terrorism?
No, as he says, the policy, Indian policy is very defined and clear that we have to curb terrorism. That point is there, one point that we have to stop terrorism. The question is how to stop terrorism, as he said, multiple factors. Some political parties, some radical parties, some parties who are having some support from the foreign countries, they're all involved. So you have to have a multi-pronged attack and multiplicity of things. You have to tackle them at one point, tackle them at another point. He has very nicely pointed out we have been facing insurgency, which is the largest form of lawlessness that is in northeast countries. And another is ethnic insurgency. Ethnic. So there you have the policy will be different. What type of policies, how negotiations can be done with the tribals, to what extent negotiations have been done is different. We have been ethnic insurgency in that area. We have been having radical insurgency in terms of certain places. Radical, I am talking in terms of leftist movements in areas near Chhattisgarh. There it has to say how it has come up, how some of the capitalists have tried to make use of this, and how the government is facing it. Then there are jihadi terrorism, which we normally go to Islamic terrorism. That is, mostly has been J&K, and they have been infiltrating here and there. And that is a dangerous form that has appreciation or fill-up at a global level. So then, as Mr. Ranjit has pointed out, there have been cases. In West Bengal, we had a Naxalism, as he will tell you, because it's a Bengal Cadre officer. In Bengal, it started from a very small sort of movement where the farmers were fired at, and that led to Naxalism. And that became a sort of tool in the hands of certain leftist forces. And still, there are Naxalists in Telangana and Bengal and certain places. So, as he pointed out, that the government has this multi-pronged sort of attack and multi-pronged policy, government of India, and they are trying their best. But the question is how far they are able to succeed. That is a question which I cannot answer, nor I can be able to answer, because that is the inside story which I will not know. What is the government idea and how they are ultimately going to control it. But at the face of it, having faced terrorism in the Northeast, I was in Chhattisgarh also, I was in Northeastern country also, I was in Punjab also, I was in the borders areas also, dealing with these. They have been sending me from time to time to various terrorist-affected states. I am of the view that everywhere a different policy has to be adopted.
I will just elaborate a little further. I've
Ranjit,
already
your
mentioned.
video is off. Can you switch your video on?
Yeah, one second.
Video on.
I'm
sir.
pressing.
Sir.
Now is it on?
No, sir.
I've pressed
not
it.
On, sir. Video is not on.
Here it's showing it's
you are audible.
Carry on without it, I think. Then.
Anyway, I'll just carry on. It'll come itself. That's what it's been doing. It's coming itself and going itself.
Okay.
See, I've already mentioned about Kashmir. Now, in the Northeast, as Mr. Sipal Singh had very lucidly mentioned, the government has followed a multi-pronged strategy to deal with insurgency and militant activities. This includes security measures, development works, negotiations with groups which abjure violence and seek resolution of their demands within the framework of our constitution to come into the mainstream of life. As a result of this, I've been in Assam also, a number of outfits have come forward for talks with the government and entered into what they call suspension of operation agreements, and some of them have signed memorandum of settlements and dissolved themselves. Recently, NDFB, they just laid down all their arms. So even in the Northeast, because of the government's strong, proactive, multi-pronged strategy at operations, enforcement, and development activities together, the situation is absolutely under control. And at the same time, in the left-wing extremism areas, government has adopted a very holistic, integrated approach, again by addressing areas of security, development, There's a national plan and a national action plan also, which when I was in service, it was a very well thought out, coordinated plan of a multi-pronged strategy in areas of security, development. At the same time, there are a lot of local communities and tribal areas. So the government ensured that their rights and entitlements were protected. They didn't want that to be disturbed. At the same time, there is something called security related expenditure under the SRE scheme. That government was funding that for the state to address the LW Naxalite problem. And then, the government of India has also been assisting the state police forces, providing intelligence. There's MAC, Multi-Agency Center for Intelligence, and providing India Reserve battalions. So while the government is also providing a lot of inputs, it is also strengthening the states to empower them to handle the situation, and also providing funds to ensure development activities at the same time. That is why I said that India is all ready as a buoyant economy, ready for growth, ready for attracting investment, because I personally can see no area of the country which is not peaceful.
Thank you very much. And that leads me to another question. Does peace bring economic growth, or economic growth brings peace?
They are both interrelated. Peace is very important for economic growth, because if there's strife, there's law and order issues, there's nuisance value, there's violence, there's terrorism, no one is going to invest in the area. At the same time, what is the second one?
Economic growth will bring peace.
Does economic growth get peace, or peace gets economic?
Yes, economic growth gets peace, because if economic growth is equitable, it burns fires in people's houses to gives them food. It makes everyone more prosperous. It increases prosperity of everyone, every citizen, everyone living in the country. So if it brings in prosperity, that will also bring in peace. Everyone will be satisfied. There'll be no unemployment, there'll be no disgruntlement, there'll be no violence, there'll be no aberrations, and there'll be no chasms between the haves and the have-nots. So it will be a very equitable, and they will also know that their peace, their livelihood is linked to good business growth. So both are interrelated. Peace brings economic growth, and economic growth also brings peace.
And so who's responsible to ensure peace?
It's we as responsible citizens of the country. If we are selfless, and whether we are or not, I leave the audience to decide. If we are selfless, if we perform our duties as a proper, responsible, duty-bound citizens, and in many cases we don't, once we do that, we will ensure peace. For example, in many states of the country, it is the people who are very demanding, and they ensure that the police does its duty properly. So the people have to, and if you'll see that the government in every state has ensured peace. You saw during the COVID times that how well everything was monitored. Food items, groceries, everything was delivered at everyone's doorstep. No one went hungry. The poor migrant laborers were all fed by all the state governments, and government handled it with great aplomb.
Thank you. Steve, question to you. How would you relate economic growth to the current situation in Hong Kong?
Well, the train has left the station with what has just happened in Hong Kong, so that's one factor. But if you go back to what the causation factor was, lots of billionaires, lots of big buildings, but a lot of other people who, as I say, could not get on. They felt that they couldn't get on the property ladder, felt that there wasn't much of a future for them. And that, if you ask what was one of the underlying factors, that was that, plus the own goal by the government on the extradition law. I would say, though, this just generically moving outside of India and outside of any one environment, if you have a non-transparent business environment, a poorly developed legal system, or a legal system that is not functioning quickly enough or swiftly enough, insufficient and unreliable market information, rapid and confusing change, that is the beginning of the bedrock for some form of terror group. And often we don't react until it's far too late as nation states.
Thank you, Steve. And I have time for one last question, and I'll ask all panelists to respond to it. The question is, in your career, can you name a few socio-political problems that you have been confronted with while on police duty? I start with you, Mr. President.
Me? You're asking me?
Yes.
Yeah. These are usually all are socio-political, because society, it was all economic, social, and political factors combined together. And what we face, Mr. Pachananda has pointed out in a very soft terms. I tell you, in very strong terms, I like to say that there are certain factors where there are dominant groups who are actually either they have money, or they have gathered money, or they have gathered money from some terrorist activities. And these social problems were great problems because they had a lot of money. How to deal with them? Under certain circumstances, this was a great social problem in Punjab. How the money was coming, where the money was stored, how we should deal with that. We had to go and deal with almost every finance company to find out as to where the money has come from. This was a great social problem, and this money was percolating not only the terrorists, but also some other moneyed groups who were again getting more money. So it was a circulation, money and money and money, and this was the greatest social problem which we had to face, which we had to check. And otherwise also, as I said, society as such, it is easier said that you just, everyone should be equally good, there's no doubt about it. But the question is, contribution is from both sides. We have to, as a law and order machinery, get the society with us. And the society has to say that law and order enforcement agencies are very, very pressed with their human resources, with other things, and therefore they have also. So the society has to cooperate with the peacekeepers, that is the law enforcement agency. This is as far as society is done. Political problem I touched indirectly, that we had to have a free hand. And the free hand can be given only by the political bosses. To what extent they should give a free hand? They have to think also to the enforcement agency. We will need to certain measures which are much more dangerous, and they'll create in circulation much more economic distress and much more reaction from the terrorists. So that was the second point, that political will may be there, but they cannot give a free hand that we should go about doing whatever we feel like society. So the political boss has to also think in terms of. And I have already told you, only this places relevance to Punjab, same as it is in respect to. There is a problem in Northeast countries, Northeast states. Northeast states problem is that there is a inter-tribal rivalry. You go and we have a negotiation with one particular tribe who is dominant. All of a sudden, some other tribe will come up for inter-tribal rivalry he created. So there are dissident groups in between. So that is another problem we face in the society. In society and in dealing with the terrorists and bringing about the economic growth, and economic growth is bringing about peace. I had touched right in my opening address that there is a school of thought which feels that if there is economic stability, if there is equitable distribution of wealth, if the resources are properly managed, then probably crime will not occur. But the other school of thought says no. crime first has to be curbed, then the peace has to be brought up. But it is both the sides of the same coin. As you put the question, whether economic growth, yes, economic growth will bring down to great extent crime. At the same time, peace will bring up economic growth. So in the society, these two things have to be made, and that is who are to get together these two things. Either it is the political bosses or the law enforcement agencies. And the law enforcement agencies are not taking in terms of the police. I'm talking in terms of the entire law enforcement, the entire criminal justice system. How do you get conviction of a person? You book a person, whether you're able to get conviction is not there. Again, that man will come back with aplomb and start dealing with in a criminal way. Narcotic crime is because of that. We deal it, but unfortunately, the law enforcement agencies are not able to give that much conviction which is required. So therefore, from society angle and political angle, these are various problems which are to be faced, which are being faced, which are being gradually ironed out.
Steve, from your perspective, what would you have expected the police officers to have done in Hong Kong in the recent socio-political problems that they are facing?
Well, 2020 hindsight is, of course, a wonderful gift that we're all possessed with. I think it's not so much the police, it was the initial Hong Kong government's response, which was, as I say, not connected. They just appeared to be on analog while they just stonewalled what was a growing, swelling demonstration, and they put the police at front. The police went at the front and took it. Normally, a government would do that for a little while we work out a solution at the back, but it went on for far too long, resulting in the police having to take much heavier action, and ultimately with what occurred with the national security law. So it wasn't recognizing the threat early enough. It wasn't dealing with the weaponization of social media. And I look at countries like India and other places in the South, and I say to myself, wow, this is a really, really dangerous tool when in the hands of people who are being manipulated from the back, which is what was going on. And I wonder whether everybody's set for that, because there's a playbook for these guys now, which is well done, very effective and very dangerous. And other than what happened in Egypt, I think the destabilization that occurred in Hong Kong was really quite extraordinary.
Thank you, Steve. Ranjit, would you like to sort of say a few words on the socio-political problems that you may have faced while in service?
Well, I'll choose to duck this question.
And wisely so. And I'll hand over back to the President to conclude the session.
And it's my proud privilege to thank the speakers. Mr. Prachananda was very eloquent, and he covered the entire canvas of criminal justice system, terrorism, and all. One point which I like to emphasize, which he hinted, was that terrorism is indeed a beast. He used the word. I say it's a beast, it's a monster. Now this monster cannot be allowed to go unchecked when he talks about terrorism. So therefore, there has to be some resolute action, some action which has to be dealt, we have to deal it with a very, very strong hand. That is what I experience. But the strong hand to deal with, as I said, also should not lead to further escalation of crime. So he covered it beautifully, and I'm thankful to him. I am very thankful to Mr. Steve also. He covered the entire gamut of violence in general. And he also touched upon radicalism, weaponization, and the total MNCs. Very beautifully explained that how the management strategies had to be changed by these MNCs with the crisis in the society. Both the speakers are really having the effective experience, and we are indeed very, very thankful to them for having spared their time and come here and address us. We are so grateful that they have given their points of view, their ideas, and their wisdom, factor wisdom to all the audience which is present there. I am failing in my duty if I do not thank the delegates and the participants who are here. And also, I'd like to thank Mr. Chairman for asking Niswat or for making Niswat host this particular webinar. Our next webinar is also very interesting. You will see on the webinar, the delegates will see when the banner comes, and I'll request them to note it, the date, and join us as participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Ranjit.
Thank you. Thank you.
And the
Thank you
next
so much.
program that we're having is on the 4th of December, Economic Development and Job Creation. So we're going to be having.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
so much for participating.
Thank you.
God bless. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So
Control, delete.